Affordable Housing Committee and the Affordable Housing Trust Board. It is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, 4:30 p.m. in the Nauset Room. It can also be joined through the website. Do you need to call you?
I will bring to order the Affordable Housing Trust Board so that we have a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Committee.
The first order of business today is a discussion and possible vote requesting an increase to the annual appropriation of $275,000. You've all received a memo regarding this with background information, so it's, maybe I'll let Alan, if you'd like to do a little bit of an overview, and then we'll have time for discussion and decision.
Sure. When we met 2 weeks ago at the Trust Committee meeting, this subject came up sort of at the end of a fairly complex 2-hour meeting, so we decided we would deal with it at the front end of this meeting. Nancy and I sent you a memorandum sort of giving the history, and I just would summarize that very quickly. In 2018, the town meeting, at the request of the Affordable Housing Committee, with the support of the Finance Committee and the Select Board, voted $275,000 annually to support the work of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And then 1 week later, it was a general override, and the voters went to the polls, and by a 646 to 245 with 13 blanks, it was adopted. We have had an annual appropriation for $275,000 every year since. It has been an independent, separate warrant article. Unfortunately, as we have moved ahead, we have learned that that 275 is fixed because it was part of a general override, so it's part of the levy limit of the town. On a memo that we sent out, I put together a table showing what has been happening, and when we looked at the real world, we discovered that in 2018, $275,000 in that market could buy one affordable housing dwelling unit, and today, based on some recent projects, it buys half a unit. So clearly, we need to do something, and this is an opportunity to talk about how we would like to proceed. So we have talked about numbers, we've talked about percentages. In any event, what's going to happen is we will have to have another general override if we proceed. So with that, any thoughts? From anybody? Michael?
I think I mentioned last time, I definitely think we need to address this and move it more up to date with what's been happening during this crisis. We did this years ago in 2018. The situation has only got worse. And whether we tie this to a percentage, which I would like to figure out some mechanism to do, I definitely think this needs to be raised to at least $500,000 ask annually and funded.
Tom?
Alan, if I could just add to that, I don't understand why it wasn't set up to be as a percentage of the property taxes. So if the property taxes go up like your sheet perfectly shows, that way there, I mean, you know, I'm just a permanent member of this town as of this year, but been here for 10 years. I never even knew 1% was going to this. So it would kind of just be, it would happen automatically. As property taxes go up, naturally the dollar amount would go up. It just seems like the right thing to do. We wouldn't have to be here a year from now or 5 years from now
Right.
trying to increase it. So just.
No, it wasn't done at the time. Nancy?
Is there any wisdom in pegging it to the price of houses as opposed to taxes or a percentage or whatever? And then can you do that?
That would be difficult.
Yep.
Because
Property.
it has to be a general override, so you have to tell the voters how much you're going to raise their taxes. So, and then you're sort of capped under that. George, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It has to be a specific amount. I spoke to a town council, and 1 or 2% of the levy is a nice slogan, and it's something we can relate to, but it has to be a specific amount of money. You could set it up such that that amount did increase by 2.5% per year, and in meeting with town council and the interim town administrator, there's no reason why, if that money were approved in a general override, it could be put right into the town budget, and you wouldn't have to revisit this with an article at every town meeting.
I think you should say that again. And it was very
Slow,
clear, but
sorry.
I think you should say that again, because there's like 3 parts to what you
All
just
right.
said. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about this. An override needs to be for a specific set amount of money. You need to tell the voters how much they're agreeing to pay on their taxes. You can agree that that amount will go up by 2.5% per year. In fact, the levy amount increases by 2.5%. So really by administrative action, it can be increased by that amount. And once the funding amount is approved at the town meeting and then at the subsequent ballot, there is no reason that it cannot become part of the annual operating budget. And we can avoid one town meeting article at every town meeting, which I think would be a success in itself.
Fran McLennan.
If we do that, what happens to the vote that was taken in 2018?
Probably functionally, you would come back and override the difference between the current amount that's been authorized and the amount that you're looking for now.
And you could word it in such a way that it moves from the awkward position of having to be revoted every year to being in the budget.
Yeah, I mean, when the town approves an override to create a new personnel position, we don't go back every year. That becomes part of the budget.
Right.
So it's very doable if there's a will to do it.
Henry?
So, George, what happens, so you're saying 2.5%? The taxes went up more than 2.5% because of the market,
The,
right? My taxes did.
yeah, that's a more complicated answer than just that.
Yeah.
The town under state law is only allowed to increase its tax levy by 2.5% per year unless there's some other action by the town meeting voters and a ballot that authorizes an increase in that. So you do that when you need to do a large capital project. We all go to the ballot and say, yes, we agree to pay that much more in our taxes. You can do it with a general override if it's needed for a long term. A debt exclusion goes away, and a general override is levy capacity that is there forever unless you take action to underride that or rescind
So
it.
when that, I don't know, I'm not following the right term, but when
Yeah.
that tax is raised more than the minimum, the 2.5%, does that trigger, would that trigger this budget?
Come to the
Raise
mic.
more than 2.5%, or would it have to go back to the town meeting?
Your actual tax bill may go up more because there are previously approved debt exclusions or overrides for other projects that are outside that 2.5% limit. So absent those, the levy cannot go up more than 2.5%. Now, there is the redistribution of values based on sales and things like that, certainly.
I'm just trying to, so there's not a way to get it closer to really what it costs to buy a new house, to buy a house?
I think you need to pick what that value is now, and you can only escalate it by the 2.5% every year unless you go back and say you need more later.
So that would be a lot, that would be like us, because the price of housing going up like that, 2.5% is gonna be like this.
Real estate is going up faster than that 2.5%. Cost of almost everything is going up faster than that. That is the town municipal budgetary challenge in a nutshell right there.
Other questions or comments or thoughts? So let's see if we, Andrea, sorry, didn't see you behind Michael, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. I was just going to jump in that Brewster manages their housing funding stream this way. That's why it became an interesting concept for us to consider.
So if we take what we've heard just in preliminary discussion, Michael talked about $500,000. We have 275 today, which is already fixed without an escalator. And if we wanted to get to 500,000, we would asked for a general override of $225,000, but done in a way that it would increase each year as the taxes rate went up, or as the tax levy limit went up. Is that what I'm hearing? Nodding
Yeah, it
heads?
doesn't have to do with the tax rate.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, not the rate. So, interestingly enough, the voters authorized 275. We've taken 275 every year. But the amount of taxes raised has increased by more than 2.5%. And so actually, if we had had the escalator involved at that 275, we'd now be probably at $345,000 a year, just because we're always bumping up against the levy limit. But because of the way the vote was taken, we can't do it. So, other thoughts? So if we decide that we have a goal of getting to 500, and we want to have the inflation factor built in, then what we would request this town council to do is prepare a warrant article asking for an additional 225 with the provisions in it that it would increase annually by whatever the percent is. Now, so that's what we would do here. I have communicated with Charlie Sumner and Mike Ford. They're ready to draft whatever we do here. We're not going to draft it tonight, but we're going to adopt the pieces, and then we'll take it to Mike Ford tomorrow. So, Alexis?
So in that scenario, are we going to be asking, this year we would ask for an additional 225 on top of the 275 to get us to 500. So in the future, are we asking for 500 every year, or are we asking for a percentage of?
Well, you're going to get 275 plus 225, and at least the 225 is going to have an escalator on it. I'm not sure about the 275. That's a legal issue that we'll have to talk out with Mike. George, you?
I was thinking about that. Initially, I thought you're stuck because you haven't escalated that 275. But the levy on that goes up every year from henceforth.
Yep.
So you can just blend that right in,
Yep.
and there's no penalty to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've lost the 5 years between 2018 and now.
Yes.
But then we start picking it
Going
up.
forward, you catch it all.
Okay.
So will there be two articles? Will there be two warrant articles in the future? So I don't get how you get from the 275 in one, and then we're going to ask for 225 more. We're going to have two of those on the warrant this year? I don't understand how we're going to, that's less money than
You've
we're
already,
asking.
you got a warrant article that was approved, and ballot for $275,000. That money is available to you every year.
It's going to come up again this year.
It will come up again this
So
year,
that'll be standing by itself.
right?
And then there's going to be a second one for the 225?
I think, leave it up to the town council. I think since it's a separate new override request, it's probably a separate article.
Okay.
And then it's up to the political will to make sure that that is escalated along with the budget every year and becomes part of the actual operating budget of the town. So that's a question that has to be taken care of. I don't think you need to take care of that in the article. That's certainly up to town council to draft the appropriate language. But we all know the intent here.
But explaining it, when we get to the next part about the community education piece, there's going to be two separate articles on the same topic, is that?
For this year.
This year, yes, but I see that as an educational piece that's, to
To me, it's as simple as the Housing Trust has been provided with $275,000 each of the past several budget years. We are requesting an additional $225,000 so that the funds are more able to address the issue, and I think you leave it at that. What we're talking about, the details of Proposition 2.5 and how things get into the actual budget, those are administrative details that don't need to be raised in public. They just become part of the operating budget of the town,
okay.
and they've been authorized.
Nancy?
I'm still troubled because when we did the 275, you mentioned, I don't know if you said it today or the other day, that that was the price of a sort of a medium house in Orleans. Is there a way that we can maintain that standard? I understand the limitations of that, but is there some means by which, do we have to come back every couple of years
That's what we're trying.
and ask for more in order to, because it kind of makes sense to at least have enough coming in for one unit a year. Does that make sense or not make sense?
Well,
That's how you sold it, right?
Yes.
So I'm just like, how, so we would have to just come back and, again, and ask for that, ask for something when we notice, oh, the price of houses has gone up, let's fix it. Is that,
Well, remember that we are talking about not prices of houses per se. We are talking about the cost to produce an affordable housing unit.
that's fine, that's fine.
And that's slightly different because
Yeah, yeah,
the average house sale in Orleans last year was over $1 million, so we're never going to get there.
at some affordable level or something like that, yeah.
I
But
should
still,
point out that the cost can go up
And-
radically or not so radically.
and it
I mean, you
can
have
go down.
you average,
Yeah.
depends on what the activity is, depends on what the real estate market is. So there's a lot of dependent variables, so you don't want to tie it to something that could go up and down.
No,
So
but I-
what you're looking for is an education piece that makes sense to people, and you can still translate it to that.
And
Yes,
but
and it
also,
gives us something that, that we can do something meaningful with each year, I guess, is what I'm,
it's initially
and
was
that's eroded over time.
But it was initially added to fund the trust on a regular basis. It wasn't necessarily to buy a home or to do any of those things. It was to have a funding stream that we could count on a yearly basis, along with hopefully the CPC
Okay, I
that would
got
come. So that was the
sidetracked by the
purpose
one
of this.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Henry Brem, back to you.
And we need to come to a microphone?
Yes.
Oh, he's got a,
He's
oh, I
not
didn't even see that. An injured person, sorry.
good.
Can we do this retroactively? Could we go to the town and say, for the 275, we need a one-year catch-up, maybe a third warrant, and get us to the point where we've caught up with the cost of housing and living, or whatever?
That would be incredibly complicated, given Proposition 2.5. Because once you go to the voters and ask for a general override, it is locked in forever.
Okay.
The only way you can undo it is have an underride, and the town of Orleans, it's probably one of the few towns in Massachusetts that had an underride about 20 years ago, and we've paid the penalty ever since. But it's not, technically it could be done, but it's not something that we would want to do now, I'll tell you. Michael?
And that's why I said the 500,000, because I think it splits the difference where we were at 275 versus what numbers we're seeing at some of the higher end units at 775. 500,000 comes somewhere right there in the middle. I think, to your point, to go retroactive and try and figure this all out would be much too complicated to the voters, excuse me. So I think if I would make a motion to increase it to increase 275 for a total of 500,000, with a Proposition 2.5 increase annually, and that it would go into our budget, and that it would be reserved for affordable housing.
Can we call that a motion?
That's a move by Michael. Is there a second to that?
If you can help clean that up, Al.
Well, we'll clean it up. And so basically what the motion says is that it is moved that the trust and the committee recommend that the annual appropriation paid for affordable housing in the town of Orleans will be $500,000. And the request for the select board, town council, and town administrator to draft a warrant article that will get us to an annual appropriation of $500,000, which in this year will include a general override of $225,000, and that money, all the money will be protected in the future by becoming part of a town budget.
For affordable housing.
For affordable housing, yes, excuse me.
Excellent. Can I second that?
Alexis, yes.
I can second.
So, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time following.
Wait,
Some regards.
I seconded it.
Yep.
Okay, now we're having discussion. Is
Go
it-
ahead.
Okay.
So, the 225, is that going to be, is that amount what's going to be changing depending on 1% or 2% of town budget or
So
free
the-
taxes, however that, like, is that part what's going to increase hopefully over time?
Hopefully, this can be written in a way that the 275 plus the 225 increases annually under the provisions of 2.5.
So do we say that we want it to be $500,000 because hopefully it'll be more than $500,000 next year? or
Our recommendation is $500,000 this year,
Okay,
and draft it in a way that it will increase annually, and it will be part of a town budget.
And once it goes into the budget, it'll just automatically increase and we won't have to vote on it again.
right.
You know, several years ago, we hired some new firefighters, as I remember, and those are in the budget, and it was a general override, and it just gets paid for. Okay, Fran McLennan.
We don't have to make the argument about whether it covers one unit now or then, because I think there's a lot of other reasons why the trust needs a lot more money in order to be able to serve the function for which it was created. And I think that as we have come to support and execute 3 projects that are fairly large here in town, that we need to turn our attention to some other, maybe smaller projects that will perhaps be more along the lines of amenable to families, young families, growing families, and possibly for purchase as opposed to just rental. So we haven't been able to address those needs, and I think to focus more on that population is something that's ahead of us, but we haven't had enough money to do any of that or come up with buy-down programs or anything like that. So it's really to put enough money in the trust to be able to help it to function the way it was supposed to in the first place.
Thank you, Fran.
Okay, I see the Wibby family has their hand raised. Katie?
Hi, thanks, Alan.
Which
Sorry,
one of
I'm
your
just in the
children
car,
wants
so
to speak?
Not using my video. I just had one question. You know, I'm supportive, if I'm understanding it correctly, that we're essentially asking for $500,000 this year and hoping that we can get language that'll increase going forward.
That's correct.
I am just wondering, given that we will be requesting an increase to, 200%, obviously, which will take a few years, is there language or do we anticipate language in this request that will include, that'll say that this is strictly for 100% and less? Or will it just be going to the trust and to the trust for, within the parameters of what it's allowed to do?
So it has to be exactly like the prior 2018. It is limited specifically to 80% and less. That's the only way that the trust can spend this town money. The trust has no power to go beyond it, and this money is limited to 80% and less.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Anything else?
Okay, Nancy, I think all your members are here, so you don't need a roll call, but I do. But go ahead.
You need Bill?
Shall we,
Yes.
all in favor? I can only do it
Raise our hand.
I can only do it as a roll call, sorry. If you're in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. 400.
Okay, the committee has
Excuse me.
voted unanimously 400. I will have to call the roll. Alexis Matheson,
Yes.
Michael Herman,
Michael Herman, aye.
Katie Wibby,
Aye.
Peter Gallagher.
Matt Cole,
Aye.
Dewey Landrith.
Aye.
Tom Jakowski.
Aye.
Henry Brem.
Aye.
Alan McLennan. Aye. 800. Ward Gorey is not here. Okay, thank you. We will meet with town council tomorrow to get this drafted, and it'll be on the selectmen's warrant really shortly.
Thank you, everybody. I think we've had good discussions, and I think this is a good move, so glad we're there. Just need to, refresh our memories, we talked about so many things. I just wanted to make sure we all know which warrant articles are up for the May town meeting, so this will hopefully be one of them. Do you want to review those, Alan, just a little bit?
Now, I'd like, actually, George could review.
George, let's.
George,
or I
review
can
all
do
the
that.
warrant articles for us.
I do have your list, but it's much better in person.
I know you were just talking about it by email, so you've got a list.
Yeah, I got a list, I'll tell you. Well, let me go to the actual warrant that the select board's using. I'm just going to run down in the order, so this won't necessarily be, the current chronological order. So the articles are, we have CPA program funding for $500,000. That is usually a pass without discussion. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund request that is currently in for $275,000.
Can I just make the point so everybody, for the new members, that's up to $100,000 AMI, right?
100%, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, 100% of AMI, yes.
Community housing.
Different than the affordable.
Yes, just to complicate things for us.
Right, exactly.
There are two Governor Prince articles. One is to demolish the existing structures on the property. I believe that, if it goes forward, would be written to support demolition somewhere on the order of $1.8 to $2 million, contingent upon the town receiving a state grant for a large portion of that amount. The other Governor Prince article is authorization to convey the property for housing. The town cannot get rid of, purchase, or dispose of property without town meeting approval. So that's a simple article, probably. There is a rental registration bylaw that's being discussed, and that's not really gelled yet, but I just want to make sure that you know that, because it is somewhat related to housing, and I don't believe there's anything to discuss at this point on that one. The special legislation to increase the affordable housing incomes that are served from 100 to 200% is on there. And you have, near and dear to my heart, two zoning articles. One to lower the minimum lot size for single-family homes in business districts from 40,000 square feet down to 20,000 square feet, which could support a single-family home or a duplex. And the second is to allow accessory dwellings on panhandle lots, of which there are probably, if I were guessing, I would say there are between 200 and 300 panhandle lots in this town. It's an extraordinary number. But those lots should be treated the way any other conforming lot in the town is treated. So those are 7, and they're all over the warrant. They're not collected necessarily, but the order is set by the select board if they decide to change the order. So that's where we are right now.
And what happened to the thing with Senator Seer?
Yeah, that's what
Is
I
that a
was gonna
warrant article?
We have that one too. To support the 1040 by,
I don't think you're on there yet.
okay. We talked about that last.
Yeah.
Okay. Glad you're here, because you're more up to date than my material.
Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. But yeah, we voted
I
on
haven't
it.
seen that written anywhere, so.
So that's 8.
It's 8, if they all go forward, right?
Well, you can't say we're not responsive to the housing crisis anyway. Any questions on that of George or anyone else? Alexis?
George, the second article after the CPC, that's just the Housing Trust's annual ask of $275, right?
Yes, and that's the one that would probably have maybe a second article or all wrapped into one.
Right,
Right.
That's 9.
if there's a second part of it.
I have a question for Alan.
Henry?
Is there any way for us to get the select board to put these together? Because from a presentation standpoint, seeing them
They're
all over
working
the
on that.
place.
Yeah,
Is is a challenge, because it could be, well, didn't we already fund that like 2.5
No.
hours ago?
Andrea and the town administrator and others are working to package these things as best they can, and Andrea can speak about it.
This is going to be the Zen. We have the longest and most expensive town meeting, I believe, ever. And in order to facilitate public education or conversation about it, tomorrow night I'll be asking the Select Board for 3 steps. If they approve it, I'm going to be asking, your committees will be one of the 7, where I'm going to ask you for 2 questions to address investment. Why should taxpayers vote for the articles you're sponsoring? And how will that vote make Orleans a better place? In 4 sentences. So I'm telling you, it's going to be the Zen, because then before each grouping of articles, we will have your 2 cents, so to speak, to introduce that part. And Mia has agreed to make short videos that can go up around a town meeting page where the public can listen to your reasoning. So we are planning an educational campaign, and not only to group the articles, but to explain them.
Did you say that it's going to be printed in the article, or it's spoken at the,
I know that we're going to have, it may be a handout yet, because remember, town warrant is a legal form.
Right.
And so, and each committee, each group has to draft the language that introduces the article. This is separate. This is kind of the shorthand version of what's essential to know. And what should you expect as a taxpayer if you make this investment?
So maybe it'd be like, the handouts that go out before town meeting, one for just all the housing articles.
Actually, it's a great question, Alexis, because we've been studying models from other communities, and Eastham tacks pages and pages and pages onto their warrant. So I don't know yet whether it's going to be a separate handout at the door when you walk
Right.
in, or we can get it. I'm not sure yet, because we've never tried this, but Charlie and I have vowed to make it happen if the Select Board blesses the opportunity.
Yep.
great. All right. Well, that leads nicely into number 3. Number 4, which is discussion talking points leading up to the town meeting, which is ostensibly the purview of the Affordable Housing Committee, but since we're doing everything together and working well together, that we want to be sure that everybody's on the same page as what we're going to be talking about. And Marcia is going to sort of walk us through this. Before she does that, I want to just have 2 questions for you as you're listening. One is, how much of this do we want to do? Secondly, what do you think are the actually main points that actually have to get across to the people? There's lots of points, there's lots of things that we can discuss, but what are the crystal pieces that you think from either the trust and the committee that we must convey leading up to the town meeting? We're using the model that we used when we supported the Penrose project and support a few years ago, and it's actually quite involved. Time is short, and I'm also listening to what Andrea's and the Select Board are trying to do so that maybe some of these things will dovetail. We don't need to do everything the same way we did the last time, but I've asked her to walk us through what we have done in the past and to see who wants to commit to working on this. If the trust wants to work on any of it, they don't have to, but we would welcome you to. And the committee, how many people want to be supportive of this and how much we have to do. It's a fine line in terms of how much do you want to talk about anything. So I think we want to make sure we understand, considering Henry's point, that it's all going to be together, and there's a lot of pieces that we've added in support of this very important crisis. So we want to make sure that we explain it well, too. So with that introduction, I'll let Marcia talk for a while.
Okay, I think it was 2 years ago. Time goes so quickly here. So I don't know, certainly the new members may not have been involved in it, but Andrea Aldana from the Community Development Partnership provided a training for the Affordable Housing Committee members on community engagement strategies. And specifically, we were oriented to how we would support particular items that were coming up to town meeting, get ourselves organized, do whatever materials we felt were necessary, and take whatever steps we thought would most effectively advocate for that. And Penrose was the example of that one in that year. So what I think would be a good idea for the committee is to use the same kind of process so that every year you're not just starting from scratch. What do we do? Who's going to do what? So I think it overall worked out pretty well, the particular procedure that Andrea took us through with training, with a few maybe adaptations we might want to do. So I just want to remind the folks who were in that training, but also all the other folks who were not in the training, sort of the basic steps of that procedure. And if we agree that procedure makes sense, then I can start to take those steps and feed back the information to committee and the trust members to whether or not this would be the way to proceed. I think with the number of warrant articles that are related to housing, it will be a lot of work in the beginning just so that we go through each one and figure out whether we're using the same strategy or a different strategy, depending on what the warrant article is. But I've started to do that already, and I think what will happen is you'll crystallize into a few key mechanisms that you want to use for all or most of them. And then it's just a matter of who's going to do which work in what time frame. So the overall procedure that we used, and we have a template that at the end of our training last year, we adopted as the template to use to develop that strategy. So it goes into very specific statements about what the objective of that particular warrant article is, so we clearly state that. It goes into how the Affordable Housing Committee is going to organize itself. We broke into 3 groups, which I thought was a little cumbersome. So what I see is maybe 2 groups, one that would focus on the messaging, what's the content of the message that we would create, and the second one on how to get the word out, who will be contacted in what mode, and how do we get that message out. But we can talk about how to organize it as we, go along. The third point was to list out the milestones and the dates. So, for example, if we're going to the FinCom, when would that be? What do we have to do to prepare for that? If you want to write letters to the editor, if you want to publish a flyer that you will hand out at meetings or at town meeting, if you want to have a consolidated talking points on housing-related warrant articles, how would you do that and who's going to do that? And what are the dates that you would need in order to produce that? So those are the milestones and dates. And then finally, who are the recipients or the outlets in terms of distribution? How widely do you want to do it? Who are you targeting this message to? And therefore, how do you modify the message for that? And then what's the work plan? We organize ourselves into groups. We have group meetings. Somebody takes a stab at particular products or content that we need to generate. I think overall for Penrose, what worked out very well is we start off with a key document, which we call key talking points, which basically lays out the major arguments for that warrant article, and we get it in one document. For the Penrose one, it went on for about 5 pages, because as we got more information about the specifics of the project, we'd keep adding to it. But everybody works from that same document. So you decide what your key messages are, you put it on your key talking points, you keep revising and adding to that as people get ideas, as you get maybe reactions from the community about, well, what about this and what about this? You add more talking points to address those concerns. So you have one key talking point article, document for each of the warrant articles. I have a feeling many of these have many of the same points, so you might start to consolidate your key talking points. So you may not end up at 9 documents, it might be something less than 9. But as you look at that, I think you will see how you can get the message across. So then the issue is, how many people are going to do this work? Because it all takes work. Who's going to line up speakers at the annual town meeting to address which issues? Do we do one flyer on general housing needs and how far we've come, and another one on mechanisms? However you want to play out that distribution of the message. And then you move forward and you do your work and get it produced. So I think that the method or the procedure can work very well. And it's a bit cumbersome in the beginning, but I think as we move forward, especially as time gets short, because we don't have that much time, become clear what we want to focus our time and effort on, and it's just a matter of who's going to do the work.
Any questions for Marcia?
And you may remember, we did produce one flyer, which I think came out pretty well. Fran did sort of one piece of it. I added some other pieces to it. We got 500 copies printed using the CPC grant for public education, and we handed it out at town meeting. So we can take that or some variation of it. I've been working on variations of that sort of general flyer about why you need housing and what are the general, eligibility categories and what's been done with the money up to now kind of thing. So I think we could turn that into a flyer or a leaflet of some sort, and you can hand that out at town meeting certainly, but if there's a citizens forum, you might hand it out there. You would find other ways to hand it out. So we did that for Penrose, and I don't think there was too much controversy at the town meeting, so we really didn't need too many speakers there. But given 9 articles, we may want to line up at least 1 or 2 speakers per article to make sure somebody gets up and says something positive about it.
Fran?
I do remember working on that. It did work. And it was cumbersome at the beginning, but I think we can make it work. It seems to me that, I have 2 questions. It seems to me we have 2 categories. We have the category of affordable housing, and that has warrant articles like the Governor Prince and conveyance, demolition, ADUs, panhandle lots, zoning from 3,000 to 2,000. All of that is project-related. Then we have to generally increase the funding in the trust, and that's still under the category of affordable housing. And under that, we have the 275 that we want to increase, and then the 500,000 from CPC. So then an entirely different topic is the attainable housing that we've been working on to raise the option of adjusting the trust to be able to serve people with incomes greater than 100% who don't qualify for subsidies but still can't get into the market. And so we have two warrant articles under that. We have that amendment that we worked on and believe has already been written, and then the support for the peak SEER legislation. So it seems to me we want to be really careful to separate the 2 topics of affordable housing and the new endeavors that we're trying to do with attainable funding. So then I have, the second question I have to ask George is, are you going to have zoning articles? So with the panhandle lots in the 3,000 to 2,000 square feet, would that be under the planning board zoning, or would that be under housing?
Those are zoning articles. Those are 2 of the 3 zoning articles. The other one has nothing to do with housing, really. So, it's up to the select board to order them in whatever way they see fit. Usually they're, somewhere in the 30s or 40s in the article range, and everybody's kind of yawning, and then you bring up zoning, and they're gone. Whatever makes sense in this town meeting. If something has to stand alone because it's not housing related, so be it, it's fine.
I think it would be helpful, though, to be at least close to it in order that we're trying to see the bigger picture. We're trying to do this cross-referencing of committees. Yes, would that be a way of reinforcing that idea?
Well, and if we go back to the toolbox that CPC recommends and the state offers, to Fran's credit, we could actually group these around funding mechanisms, projects advancements, and zoning advancements. So that's 3 out of the 4 that the state recommends we talk about in terms of categories. I think all 9 fit into those 3 categories.
Except for the attainable housing.
But attainable is still, it's a funding stream for housing.
Yep.
Right? So
Yeah, it is, but it's I worry that people are going to get it confused, because we got it confused. We had to have 2 meetings to sort it out amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
So I just somehow think it has to be separated significantly, clearly, this is a new conversation,
That's fair.
And there's no funding connected with
and there's
that
no funding connected
Right.
with it.
at this point in time.
So how would you, do you have a category in terms of, so just to make it easy for people, what I'm concerned about is we have such a long warrant. The attention span for each article may be like 10 seconds, right? And so how do you make it essential that the mechanism at the root of progress is clear? I mean, I'm really talking about, the bones of what we're trying to do evident.
Well,
So I
The
think
SEER piece, the trust and the SEER piece
Yeah.
are broadening the conversation, taking this to another level, actually. It's not actually responding to what exists right now. So, which is an interesting concept for the town meeting in a way. Aren't we? I was saying that these are things we want to do, but they don't occur right now.
We do, just not in our community.
Right.
In that we're looking for innovative ideas. It could be a future innovative ideas.
That could be a talking
section
point.
that These are proven to work in other communities, and we'd love to try them in our community.
You should just speak on that one, Michael. That's very good. Good job.
No, but, because
Yeah.
both of them have been done before.
Sure. Yeah, we didn't just come up with this on our own. This is, I think they have to be separated out that way, though. I think
I
so.
think to Fran's point and Andrea's, that
Yep.
we should break them down into the infrastructure, the projects and the funding, and then there can be future innovative ideas or something, could be a fourth category.
It's actually easier, when we started talking about this process that Marcia just described, it's too much information, but to categorize it and put it in small pieces,
Even the
I
rental
think.
registration might go into that future, which has been
Right.
in other communities,
Yep.
neighboring communities, but we just haven't done it here. So I think it helps people so that they're not as fearful of these ideas to show where they've come from.
Okay. Going forward with this, do we want to, does the trust want to work on these with us? In terms of, and any input on this, or is this going to be left to the committee with oversight?
We're more than willing to give input.
What does that mean? Do you mean after we write it, you're going to look at it, or you're going to
No,
help
we
write
can
it?
help you write it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, some of them probably are more trust-related than.
I think they
committee-related.
are. I think there's, everything's, moving that way. So I think we need to,
Well, in terms of next steps, I certainly can take the initial step in terms of sort of
Organizing it.
fill out the basic form, so to speak. I think on key talking points, you might want to pick someone who's going to do it. I think on the expansion of the trust issue, that's definitely a trust thing, so the trust sort of needs to, I think, write up the key points on it, the history of it and what it will do, et cetera. So somebody on the trust might want to take on that key talking points. I think for the others, I have enough, and I can work with George on the details of the Warren article, that I can do a first stab at key talking points. A lot of them are going to be similar from one to another, and so I'll be just cut and pasting a lot of things. And then what we can do is, we sort of need I think a group, and we were talking about 3, however many you need, so
3?
that you don't have a quorum, that can, of the committee, that can at least take those and add to it, fill in blanks and that kind of stuff. And then we can pass it around and people may have comments and additions to it. That can be done, that's a paper shuffle kind of thing,
Good, okay.
fairly quickly. I don't think that's going to take a hell of a lot of time. And I am glad to sort of start at least the framework or the bones of it, so that then somebody can take it, fill it in, add, ask questions, and then pass it out.
thank you, Marcia. Is there anybody in our committee in attendance today who would like to work on this?
I will say, though, if you're going to do any nice flyers like we did, that took a while. So somebody, if we're going to do, say, a general purpose flyer on housing needs and what we've done thus far, somebody, and I can take what we had before and work with someone to sort of give you a general purpose, housing is a good thing for all of us kind of flyer. And then somebody else at some point needs to then take the warrant articles and group them, categorize them, key points for each, however you want to organize your thoughts around those. So right away, I can see, you know, the procedure, key talking points. Part of it is, do you want to do media at all? I don't know whether the people will do it. We do have a website now, so we could put FAQs, a whole section on the website in terms of the warrant articles and what the key points are. That we could put on the website and make it searchable, both for the town point of view as well as for affordable, attainable housing. So we have those mechanisms. So I think there's maybe 4 pieces of kinds of paper that I can see right away. I would ask who wants to work on flyers, because that takes a particular amount of labor, excruciating labor.
Is there anyone who wants to feel that way at this, right now?
I mean, I won't say anything specific. I'll do whatever I can to help, whether it's flyers or writing or anything. I'd be happy to. You tell me where I can be of help, and I'll do that.
Okay. Yes, Michael?
I would also, if we're looking for distribution, as you mentioned, whether media or press, also reaching out to our, and I'm sure you will, the CDP and HAC and HPC and seeing what they can do for advocacy around these articles for Orleans. Because we have met with them, they come to our meetings, they know what they're doing, and I think they're just another avenue we can use to help us.
Yeah, and I think it was HAC last year that, or in the fall, for special town meetings or spring town meeting, they had the articles listed out by town as part of a
Right.
PR thing, so to get more people involved.
I think CDP did that also, so. Scott?
May I raise a concern, which is, we collectively spend days and hours discussing these measures and their whys and their wherefores and their rationale. And we're proposing to put that in document form that is submitted to the populace on the day of the meeting. Is there anything that we can do to get this information to people well in advance of that, so it doesn't create just a sense of how did this come about? I mean, just to raise a lot of questions. If you're presented with a lot of information 5 minutes before you have to make a decision, it creates anxiety. So if there's some way of packaging and getting information to people with more time for them to personally deliberate, it might make for a more equitable, if not just a smoother kind of discussion at the meeting itself, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Michael?
Yeah, I would agree, and that's where we could use these organizations to help us. Again, as somebody mentioned, I forget, it was Marcia, we do have our website that we can use in the News and Noteworthy, and to that point, I was going to bring up, in addition to just doing it for town meeting, I do think quarterly we need to give an update on where we are with our projects. This way, we're not trying to educate people in the last run-up to town meeting. Every time I seem to go to the Citizen Forum, and it's not on housing, somebody asks the question, what's going on with housing? And Alan is great that he is there, and lucky we are to have him give us a brief update on all of the things. But it would be nice to have something that is gone out to either on our website, that is just updated quarterly on Penrose, 107 Main Street, on Governor Prince, of just 3 or 4 sentences of what's going on, the breakdown of how many units are affordable, how many units are not, where they are, do they still need bridge funding, at what the timeline. Again, a small paragraph, and if we threw that on our website every quarter, I think people would start getting used to it, because I'm always surprised, and it's hard to separate, we talk about this so much, both here and at the select board and throughout town, the housing issue, that some people really aren't up to date on what's going on with the housing, and I understand that makes sense. And I think we all need to be cognizant of that, and if we can constantly update people, and I don't mean, not constantly, but every other month, every quarter, I think it would be a big help to us when we do wind up at the town meeting once a year or twice a year. Thank you.
Noted. Yes. Okay.
I got one.
Henry?
Can we, I notice we sometimes get things in the mail that haven't been stamped. Is that something that we can do? Send it to everybody? No?
No.
You shouldn't get anything in the mail that's not stamped. Because that's illegal. You shouldn't be getting anything in the mail that hasn't.
Somehow the post, I don't know whether it's in the fire department or the Friends of the Police, or the post office delivers.
Like the bulk rate, it's a run for, okay.
Okay. Do we have enough to get started then, I think?
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
We definitely have enough to get started, so,
Up to 20 pages yet?
and,
Hopefully not. I try to keep it short.
no, that's, that.
And I will say, I absolutely understand in the quarter report, a lot of people don't think about it till town meeting. So I do think we do have to plan on town meeting convincing people. Whether or not they've gotten 10 articles and went to the Citizens Forum. Most people don't go to the Citizen Forum. Most people don't read their junk mail. Most people don't think about it until they absolutely have to. So I think it's very important we are prepared at town meeting to answer. I never heard about this. Where did this come from? Somebody has to be prepared to answer that.
I agree with that. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say and
No, no, no,
or,
no. And
just
I'm not
in-
disagreeing
in
that.
combination with.
Information, but, you know, I've talked to so many people, told them about the website, they said, well, I never go to the town website.
Of course, I understand.
Most people don't, right?
Anything else on this topic? I think we have our work cut out for us, but I think we have good things to offer, so I think it'll work out fine. Okay, to be continued.